Welcome to the Geek to Geek podcast, where it's spooky. I think I did that last year, actually. Oh man,
we might have.
Something
but now
else.
It's like,
welcome to the
spookier.
Geek to Geek podcast, where a black cat may cross your path in audio form. Man, I should have prepared a better intro. There we go. Yes, Foley work. Okay, sorry. We're talking about Halloween today. We are. And mostly this is a topic that I wanted to hit because I don't have a lot to add here, but like you geek out over Halloween. So I thought we should actually do an episode about it, right?
I do. I love Halloween so much, and it's weird that it's only the last probably 10 years where I've really geeked out about it, but it was something that I've loved my entire life. It was always probably my favorite time of year, and I just never really thought that much about it as being a holiday that you can do that kind of stuff for. Like, if that makes sense. Like, you do stuff for Halloween, like you will go and do stuff for Christmas, and lately that's how we treat Halloween.
That's interesting. Yeah, no, I mean, what do I have to add here? Reese's peanut butter cups are the best candy, and
they are.
It's fun to take my kids trick-or-treating.
Okay, but there's so much more than that, though.
I don't have time for the rest of it. I don't have time.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Now I totally do understand that. Do you guys do any kind of like family pumpkin carving or decorating or anything like that?
Yeah, a little bit of that. We usually carve pumpkins or go to a pumpkin patch or both, and that's kind of the extent of the whole season. I mean, it's always busy, especially with kids in school now. It's even busier than it used to be. So, but you do a lot. Like, you send me pictures. You sent me a picture of like skeletons hanging out on your couch the other day.
We don't like normal Halloween like a lot of people. Like, when you think about Halloween, for so many people, it's the scary, gory horror movie kind of stuff where it's super creepy, it's dark, there's spider webs everywhere. That's not so much our Halloween. Our Halloween is dumb. We like dumb Halloween and goofy Halloween and the silly stuff that is not scary, where it's almost the Scooby-Doo-ish kind of Halloween spooky stuff where it's over the top, and we just call it dumb. Like, we love the dumb stuff. And like when we're out in public, we'll see something that's like, oh, that's real dumb, and that means we're going to buy it. And so Jennifer loves skeletons, and over the last few years, she has really gotten to where she likes decorating with for Halloween with skulls and skeletons. And I want to say it was 4 years ago that she finally splurged and bought 2 of the life-size skeletons at Target, where they're 5 feet tall, and we named them Jennifer and Beej. And because they're us, and every year we do some sort of scene with them. Like, we'll set them up. The first year we had them, we put our running clothes on them, and I can't remember. We always name them too, and I can't remember what that one was. It was Run for Your Life or something like that, Run for Your Death, something along those lines, where we dressed them up in running clothes. And then last year, I know we had them outside because, well, we also play a game called Skeleton Charades with them, where we make people act out what they're doing, but making the skeletons do it instead of them. But because they're not fully articulated, one of my friends broke one of the skeleton's arms off, and so I think it was Jennifer that he broke the arm off of. And that since she didn't have her arm, the scene that we put up last year was we stuck the arm in the ground, and like it was a ring toss, and they were playing ring toss around her arm that they were standing up in the front yard. This year we're doing a David S. Punkins one, where we have the skeletons wearing skeleton outfits, and Jennifer is building a tombstone that just says David S. Pumpkins, any questions? And one year we dressed them up like Superman and Lois Lane because we have a typewriter on an old typewriter desk. Like, we like that kind of goofy Halloween. That's why I sent you pictures of them. I sent you pictures of Jennifer and Beej right now, just kind of chilling on the couch, chilling on one of our love seats in our den, just waiting on Halloween.
Cool. I mean, I'm glad that you do that, but I know you do more than that too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a lot of this goes back to where Jennifer and I got married on Halloween. And so we collected a lot of decoration because when you're getting married on Halloween, you have to decorate like you're getting married on Halloween. And luckily, we didn't have a huge fancy wedding. One of the great things about being in the South is that our weddings around here don't tend to be the absurdly extravagant ones that we'll spend a few $1,000s on stuff, but a lot of times it's not expected for somebody to have a super posh, $10 to $15, $20,000 wedding. Like it's just, that's absurd here, like for almost everybody. So we were able to get away with going to craft stores and buying Halloween decorations and harvest decorations with pumpkins and stuff like this. So we were able to collect a lot of like indoor decoration that way. So we started putting that stuff out and just kind of collecting it. I mean, like I said, we love dumb stuff. So we have a skeleton that hangs on our wall. His name is Dr. Glitterbones. I'm assuming you can figure out why his name is Dr. Glitterbones. We say he's fancy because he has a top hat and he's made out of glitter. Like we love this kind of stuff. And we love Dr. Glitterbones. We actually keep him up all year long just because he's fancy and he's our friend. Just stuff like that. We absolutely just love that goofy Halloween weirdness type stuff. So we always go all out on the front yard now that we have a house with a yard. We can decorate. And last year we had a kind of a haunted trail that led up to our house where the trick-or-treaters would come through and Jennifer would lead them through these little stations she had that would scare them. And that was super fun with things that would shake and jump out. Like Jennifer has started buying the animated and animatronic stuff that she can interact with people with.
So you guys enjoy scaring children.
We love scaring children. One of the best times we've ever had. Like, we love scaring kids. Like, it is great, and we never do it maliciously. It's not something where we like try to frighten them. We don't try to traumatize these kids, but we love scaring them. And the first year, we always have a Halloween party as well. And it's kind of an excuse to have an anniversary party for us and get together with our friends. Halloween has kind of become our thing. So we got this house. We have our Halloween party. First year we've been here, we may have moved in maybe 2 weeks, where might have been 3 where we had been in the house. And so it's our first time really getting trick-or-treaters because the places that we lived before didn't get a lot of them. And so we had the decorations up outside to let everybody know that it's okay. And we like this little girl knocks on the door, and Jennifer has bought at this point a 6-foot tall animatronic witch that she has been answering the door with. She will stand behind the door and hold this witch to answer the door because it'll say things like, "Hello, my pretty," and just all sorts of weird things like that. And its eyes will light up and flash and make these like noises too, and it's great. I absolutely love it. And she opened the door for this kid, and the witch went off and opened the door, and this kid just bolted screaming down our front yard, just all the way back to her car. And Jennifer's laughing. This little girl's dad is dying laughing. Like, it's something where normally you would feel bad about this, but he was like, "That's one of the best things I've ever seen. Thank you for that." And it's just like, it was funny because she just didn't nobody expects a witch to actually open the door. And so we try to be those Halloween people. Like, we're not the crazies who spend all of our money on it, but we try to make it fun for people as opposed to just being a couple of people handing them a piece of candy. Like some of my best memories as a kid, like going trick-or-treating, were when I actually got scared at somebody's house. That I went and trick-or-treated at my uncle's house, I remember one time, and he was like, oh, my neighbor's giving away candy. So I went over there, and they were holding somebody, like they had hidden somebody under a pile of leaves in their front yard, that as you walked up, they would jump out of this like just giant pile of leaves and scare the kids. And that's one of my favorite things, because I was so scared. Like I was scared to death of this thing. And now looking back, 30 years later, I'm like, that is one of the greatest things that's ever happened to me. And so I just love this time of year and being able to do stuff like that, because I really hope that little girl grows up and in 30 years that she will remember being scared of that witch when she went trick-or-treating. Because I'll never forget being scared of that pile of leaves and that zombie.
Okay, and you said that you guys do like pumpkin carving too. Like your wife is pretty handy, right?
Jennifer's really good at this. I am terrible with my hands. That it's if you try to get me to carve a pumpkin or draw a picture or make something that's not on a computer, it's going to turn out like a Pinterest nailed it. And you know what that is, right?
No.
Oh,
no, wait.
boy.
Yeah, I do. From context clues, I just figured it out a second ago. Yes, I got it.
Where there's a website. If you guys just Google, if you've never heard of this, Google Pinterest nailed it, and they're fantastic. A lot of them have to be staged, but it's when there's something beautiful that's on Pinterest, you're like, oh yeah, that would make my life better. That's really pretty. I can do that. And then you make this horrible, grotesque, just awful attempt at it that looks like you just kind of smashed things together and didn't know what you were doing. That's me. Like that's the difference in me and Jennifer making things. And she is brilliant at pumpkin carving. She used to have pumpkin carving parties with all of her friends to teach them how to carve pumpkins. And she's had the libraries gotten her to make them. Like she's always made them for like the English department. When she graduated, they got her to make one so that they could set out. And she used to do them on Punkins, the fake pumpkins, but she's stopped doing that so much because she says it's more fun to carve on real ones. So she's done that, and we go to the pumpkin patch every year usually and pick up a few pumpkins. We usually spend about $30 on different sizes of pumpkins for her to carve, and she's practicing on sculpting now. That she's wanting to be one of those kind of pumpkin sculptors where they do the 3D faces and all the stuff around it to make it into things. And so she's learning how to do that, and like that long-term goal of being on Halloween Wars is something like that'll never happen. I mean, don't get me wrong, like she's not that like professional grade, but she wins every pumpkin carving contest she's entered, and it's been a wonderful way for us to get some free meals at with different contests for the gift cards they give away.
Okay, that's cool. So all of that led you to get married on Halloween. I know you wanted to tell one specific anecdote from that.
It did. I don't know how it is in Minnesota and other parts of the country, but there's a stereotype about the South where
I like the way you said that, as if like Minnesota is like the important part, and then the rest of it is an afterthought. That was a nice touch.
It's true. It's the after, but it actually was, because I thought about talking about just there. I'm like, no, maybe everywhere other than the South. People around here can be a little crazy religious. You may have gathered that, and people aren't necessarily the most understanding about Halloween because of that. And we have a lot of people who look at Halloween as being a really, really negative thing around here. So we had every reaction under the sun that you could get. We've had people ask Jennifer, we had people asking like, are you gonna wear a witch's outfit? She's like, no, I'm wearing a wedding dress because it's my wedding. Well, is it gonna be a black wedding dress? Nope, it's a wedding dress because it's my wedding. But are you not gonna even wear a witch's hat? Nope. Wearing a wedding dress because it's my wedding.
That sounds very frustrating.
Like people could not like get this through their heads. Like we had talked initially about doing the really goofy, like, dress up and have a costume wedding. Like, that got put out really quickly. Like, that got thrown out very quickly because we wanted a wedding. I mean, it was like, we had a really nice wedding. I don't remember a lot about it. The day was a blur for me, but it was a nice wedding. We had it decorated. Everything was super cool. And then the reception, we had kids dressing up. Like if anybody wants to dress up for the reception, that's great. But, you know, we're going to have a wedding ceremony. And people could not get it. That people just did not get that it was an actual wedding, that it just happened to be on Halloween. People were losing their minds. They were asking all sorts of stuff, like if we were gonna have somebody, and I don't remember who it was, asked us if we were gonna have a witch marry us, and we're like, no. We had a pastor do it, or I had a reverend do it, rather. And it's just like, why is it so hard for people in this area to understand you can get married on Halloween and it not be something like super weird?
I don't know. I think it might be a uniquely Bible Belt problem that you're running into there.
It really might be, and I'm thinking that might be the case. We have people who won't even partake in fall activities if they're Halloween themed in a lot of places, and they're very vocal about it. And yeah, they're the minority. Don't get me wrong; that is very much the minority. But it's people who are vocal about it. It's just, it made us stand out for the people who knew it, and now Halloween's kind of just become our thing, and we just love that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there are always going to be like some very religious people in some parts of the country that, well, anywhere, you know, there are pockets of them, but I think that you're probably running into more than normal because of where you live.
Oh, and I'm sure of it. I mean, that I think that honestly probably goes without saying, just because, the middle of the Bible Belt like this, it's absolutely true. Oh, no, I laughed the other day because just talking about the Bible Belt, there's a stereotype of having a church on every corner, and I was just driving down the road and I counted, and we literally had, for 4 blocks, there were 5 churches on the corners.
Right. So Halloween, you said you have some aspirations, right?
Like, we want to be able to travel and do like ridiculous Halloween stuff. Like I'd mentioned, Jennifer wants to be on Halloween Wars. That if she ever gets good enough, I mean, it takes so much work to be able to get that professional grade. Like, these people are professional artists doing this, and she's a hobbyist. But she's trying, she's practicing, she's putting in the work and doing it. One of her best friends got her a fancy pumpkin carving set as her Christmas gift a couple of years ago, where they're not these like Pumpkin Masters things that you'll buy at the store, the plastic ones. These have like wooden turned handles with metal edges, like metal tools, so that she can do it all professional, like with chisels and tools. Like, it's really cool. And she's used some of her woodworking chisels for pumpkins as well. At some point, she's actually used power tools on them. You can use Dremels a lot, is great for pumpkin carving as well. I didn't realize that with the shading and stuff that you can use a Dremel and a small sander to do a lot with it. So you can pumpkin carve with power tools. And if they're big enough, you can use chainsaws. And then one thing that we really want to do, like, we were so sad that when we went to Oregon a couple of years ago, we were really sad that we went to Oregon during the summer because that was the time that we had off. But we wanted to go because there's a pumpkin regatta, and where they take these gigantic pumpkins, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds, and they hollow them out and make canoes out of them. And you ride through, like, you can ride in the middle of a giant floating pumpkin down the river. And I want to do it so bad. Like, we really need to travel out to Oregon again to get in the giant pumpkin regatta. I want to so much.
That is pretty sweet. That would be fun. That would be
so awesome. And I mean, I went this year. I think I may have sent you a picture or a text or something that I was going to one of the local festivals, the first Fridays that we have around here, because they were dropping like a 400-pound pumpkin from the top of a crane, and it splatted.
You did tell me about that.
So good. Like, it went everywhere. It was the best. They finally learned how to make this thing explode. And the weird part about this, and the reason I wanted to say it, is that, you know how when like you go on to a parade and kids will like get candy and like scramble along the ground if candy drops, when does that, they did this for the innards of pumpkin. And I
Okay.
think it was purely training from parades that when something scatters along the ground, that you scatter for it, that you just go for it and skitter at it. And it's like I saw these parents, their kids bringing just pumpkin guts and raw pumpkin back to them, and these pieces of pumpkin hull, whatever it's called. And they were like, why would you pick that up? It's just pumpkin. But it was just super funny to me, where Jennifer and I were just laughing the whole time. I love just stuff like that. People just tend to have such a good time this time of year, and I think that's part of it. Just the joy and happiness that just being this silly can make, that it can bring people. It makes me so happy.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing your love of Halloween and the season. I'm just going to encourage everyone, eat more Reese's peanut butter cups. That's the most important part of Halloween.
Not Reese's peanut butter cups, the Reese's peanut butter pumpkins.
Reese's peanut butter everything. Like, let's be clear here. At the end of the day, it does matter, but at the same time, it doesn't matter. As long as you're eating like Reese's peanut butter in some form or another, paired with chocolate, you're on my good list. We're okay.
That's true. That's true, but the pumpkins are better.
It depends. Seasonality, that's a bigger discussion. Okay, let's get into the geeky offer of the week. You can go to audibletrial.com/geek2geekcast and get a free book on us for free to help the podcast and help you. Everybody wins. That's the important part. My recommendation this week is From a Certain Point of View, which, do you know what this one is?
I heard of it, and when I saw it, I don't know what it is, but I've heard of it.
So it's a new Star Wars book, but it's different. It's interesting. It's a bunch of authors that wrote a series of short stories, and so far I haven't finished it yet, but where I am in the book, so far it's a retelling of Star Wars Episode 4, so it's A New Hope, but from all of these side characters. It's really, really interesting. So it starts off with basically like right after Rogue One, and it's like the captain of the Tantive 4. Like, he's the first short story, right? And you get to see like what's going on with them, how they end up near Tatooine, and like Darth Vader coming onto the ship from his point of view. And then it jumps to the next short story, which is like a stormtrooper that's part of that raiding party.
Cool.
And then it jumps to a new short story where it's this like data analyst person who's like, an administrator, but they're really good at paperwork. And a stormtrooper comes to her and they're like, I let this escape pod go, and I'm kind of regretting it because I didn't want to have to explain why I was shooting at something that didn't have life forms in it. How do I get out of this? So it's like the people who let the droids go, and didn't take a shot at them. And so it's a whole short story about like all of these pieces of paperwork that you can file to like cover your tracks, that one was my favorite so far. But it's like that, like it progresses on, right? There's like a short story about Jawas and a short story about like droids. So far it's going pretty chronologically in order, retelling the first Star Wars movie from all of these different minor characters' points of view. So I really like it.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's good. So From a Certain Point of View or Star Wars From a Certain Point of View, either one of those searches will get you there. Again, audibletrial.com/geek2geekcast. With that, it's time for a weekly Geekery, where we share what we've been geeking out about this week. We both had something because it just came out, which this is going to be old news by the time the episode hits, but that's okay. We told you our October's a little out of time. They just announced the title of the new Star Wars movie is Solo, a Star Wars story. And I was texting you about this today because it seems so obvious. Like, it's not that it's wrong. It's just like I expected more than that.
I did too. Like, I was almost expecting something like that had to do with the Western aspect, or like a like kind of him being an outlaw or a scoundrel or something along those lines, as opposed to Solo.
Yeah, and like you said, if the title is just Solo, like, is the plot suddenly extremely obvious? Is it him being a loner and then finding Chewie in the Kessel Mines and then like them becoming friends and learning the power of friendship? I hope that's not the story they're telling, because it's so obvious. Like, I don't want to watch that.
I'm so certain that's what it's going to be, though. Like, it's so on the nose. The reason I'm thinking that is because of the trouble they had with the previous directors, that it seems like that would be something they would fight against and something that Disney would want them to hold very close to. It just seems so and too obvious, but at the same time, so and to they're not going to do anything else.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I hope that we're wrong. I hope that I'm pleasantly surprised. Like, I'm not shutting myself off from this movie. It's Star Wars. I'm going to watch it, obviously.
I just want to see Donald Glover, and I'm going to be okay.
Okay.
Like, I love him, so I'm good.
You had a couple other things for your geekery, though. And then I have to unpack some thoughts about Shadow of War, so
okay,
you go
mine,
first.
I haven't been doing a whole lot this week.
That's okay. I have a lot of thoughts about Shadow of War.
So this is great. I have been listening to The Turtles All the Way Down by John Green that I recommended a couple of weeks ago. And it is absolutely wonderful. That it is definitely a YA novel with a teen protagonist. Don't get me wrong. But what I was talking about where I'd read stuff that he actually was able to put into words what it's like to have anxiety and intrusive thoughts and OCD is absolutely spot on. Where I was listening to it and I realized that it talked at one point about having intrusive thoughts, where that's where you get a single idea and you focus on that idea to the exclusion of everything else, and it's something that is completely unrelated that intrudes on your normal thought patterns and the conversations, everything, and you can't focus on anything but that. And it made me realize that while I was listening to this audiobook, I was doing that about something else. And one of my doctors had said I might have minor OCD tendencies. So it clicked there. But it really just the way that they talk, and it's like, usually I'm reading a young adult novel and I look at the angst and the drama and these emotions, and I'm like, man, I must have felt like that when I was a teenager, because, being a teenager is hard. And but it's like, man, just suck it up. It's going to be okay. And with this one, whenever it goes into all of that, because it's anxiety based, it's like, yeah, I felt like that the other day. That's exactly what it's like, and it's really weird to have it put down on paper in describing something that is almost inexplicable and putting it into words. It's super weird, but this one isn't as flowery as other John Green books, so I'm really enjoying it probably because it's in first person as well. The story itself, it's okay. It's fine. It's what you would expect. But the characterization is done so well with the portrayal of somebody with mental illness and dealing with it with something that is not it being a good thing, that you could be a genius if you have this anxiety. I mean, all the great artists, and it's like, I'd rather my body and brain work the way they're supposed to. And it's like, it's just really, really pertinent for me. And I can't recommend it enough. You guys can go to audibletrial.com/geek2geekcast and get it for free on Audible like I did.
You can do that also, yeah. Well, I'm glad that it lived up to what you were expecting.
I went for a run listening to it today. I didn't even listen to music. I was listening to this about anxiety while I go do my meditative running. So super good. Exposure therapy, right? Okay. Today I was reading, this one actually came out today. I've been playing it today. Shin Megami Tensei Synchronicity Prologue. Did you hear about this at all?
Is this the one that's like a couple of the basically like personas or whatever, and it's a platformer or something? I vaguely think I know what you're talking about.
Well, it's a game that there's a new Synchronicity. There's new Shin Megami Tensei game coming out and called Synchronicity, I believe. And they made a joke the other day that there was a Metroidvania style game that
this is the one I was thinking
exist.
about.
And then all of a sudden they released it, and you can download it for free for PC until like Christmas Eve, I believe. But the thing is, it's all in Japanese, and it's super fun and super weird just to be going through, because I don't understand any Japanese whatsoever. I used Google Chrome to translate the page so that I could get to the download, installed it, and it's just super fun and silly, and it just makes me so happy that they would release these kinds of small games for fans as something like, oh yeah, we did have this, we did make it, here you go. And I love Metroidvania games though, so it's something I always try them when I get the opportunity. And while it's not, in the Persona direct series or anything, and I really have no idea what's going on, it's super cool. So if you like that kind of thing, y'all, you can download it between now and Christmas 2017.
I might try that out. It sounds weird and interesting and something that I might enjoy.
Yep, it's not a game that you'll probably spend a whole lot of time on.
No, I wouldn't think so.
It plays like a Metroidvania game, but when you kill time doing something like that, it's very much worth it.
Cool. Okay, so Shadow of War. I've been playing this a bunch for the last week, and I don't even quite know where to start. I think I should say that, I feel like it's a messy game in terms of the design. It's trying to be a lot of things, and maybe it's trying to be too much. There's some conflict in, the systems and the story and, how they interact, and I guess a good place to start is, the open world versus the main quest, because I feel like they're almost two different games there, especially for the first act. It gets better in the second act, which I think I'm right near the end of the second act as of right now. But I wasn't really drawn to the story side of it. I just wanted the systems to fully unlock so that I could play in the open world that they had set up. But no, all of the interesting powers and abilities and stuff are locked behind that first act of the story. You don't actually get to them until you get to certain points in the story. And even after that first act, there are other abilities and stuff and extra powers or tweaks to your powers that you can't do until you finish certain quests, which doesn't feel great, especially because I played the full first game and I beat it, It was a couple years ago at this point, but I still know the systems. I didn't need a full, I'm talking 6 hours here, 6 to 8 hours, probably more 6 hours to get through the first act of it. And that was me casually messing around in the open world, but mostly focusing on the story. Not quite critical path, but, close enough to it.
Where it was a pseudo tutorial that entire time working you through these different systems.
Yes.
And opening them up gradually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so because of that, I felt okay, I can see the interesting systems over here working, and I can't fully interact with them because I'm just crippled until I get to a certain point in the story. But even then, the main story characters aren't that interesting. The orcs and the Nemesis system, those are a lot more compelling. But I guess that's a side thought. My main problem with it is just that the system is all about player choice, but the story doesn't lend itself to that. I never feel like I have agency when I'm playing the story missions. They pull it away from me. They make me do a very specific thing, and it's not necessarily how I would approach it or what I would want to do, or I don't know. It feels like two different things side by side, but not really interlinked in an interesting way. Whereas when you are in the open world, there are so many options. There's so many ways to approach it. There are these dynamic things that get generated based on the orcs and how you interact with them and whether you defeat them or you don't defeat them.
Yeah.
And then you get to the story and it's just so scripted and so you have to do it their way. Otherwise you fail the mission. It just feels bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I hate when games do that, where if there is, and I understand there having to be a solution to the problem. I totally get that. And I think I may be spoiled because of games like Breath of the Wild now, but when there are obvious other solutions that you can use to go through this and you try it and it doesn't work and it locks you out and it forces you to go through one that is honestly more obtuse, it takes you out of the game and makes it more frustrating to play.
Yeah. And so Act 1 felt really bad, but even into Act 2, I wasn't fully able to play in the open world until probably 10 hours into this game. And so it felt like I was ready to take on the world and play around with those systems about an hour in. It took me about an hour to get back up to speed on this game because it's been a couple years since I played the last one. But about an hour.
It's fairly complicated, right? I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff.
It would take a little bit of time.
Yeah, if you've played other third-person action games recently, especially if you've played the last one of these, or if you've played an Assassin's Creed, or if you've played any of the recent Batman games, not the Telltale ones, but the action ones, systems, you can figure this combat out pretty quick, like probably in that hour, maybe 2 hours. So about an hour in, I felt like I was ready to take on the world, but instead it's locked behind another like 10-ish hours of gameplay or 9-ish hours of gameplay at that point, which was just frustrating. And it's like, there may just be too many systems here is one of the other things. And I suspect that it's more so that they have like avenues to monetize this game than to actually make the game good. Because the first game was kind of messy with some of its like progression systems too, and the Nemesis system. And I thought they would just iterate on it. But instead of taking like a complex system and kind of like refining it, they took a complex system and they tacked on more complex systems on top of it.
Okay.
And it's like now you have like all of these different gear drops, and it's like different levels of gear with different like subquests on them, and it can be like rare, or it can be legendary, or it can be, you know, story. Like there's stuff from like MMOs and like other genres.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it sounded like to me. The stuff that I've read about this so far, everything seemed like it was a single player MMO. That the loot drops, the loot boxes, the stuff that you could grind for, the way that you can get the purchasable currency in game, all felt like you were playing at the end game of an MMO, except you had to do every bit of it alone and grind it out solo.
Yeah, and like I haven't actually spent money on it. I haven't felt like I needed to, but I mean, it just, something feels off about it. Like it feels more grindy than it should for the type of game that it is. And it's not even that I mind grind, because there are RPGs that have a ton of grind that I will gladly play. You know, like you can look at the hours I've poured into RPGs over the year. I don't mind grind when it's actually baked into the DNA of a game in a smart way. But this feels like extra systems for the sake of extra systems, so that maybe you'll spend a couple bucks on a loot box or something. It feels muddy. It feels messy. It feels a little dirty, even though I haven't actually needed to buy anything. I haven't spent any extra money, and I suspect I don't actually need to. But I'm holding those two thoughts in my head at the same time. You know what I mean?
It's probably because you haven't finished the game yet, too. Like, once you get all the way through it and you open up that last bit, that's the stuff that I've read about being super, super grindy, trying to reach everything to max.
Yeah, and so I think I'm right near the end of Act 2. And from what I've heard, if you hit Act 4, it kind of opens up the open world in a different way that is even more grindy. And that's where people really feel compelled to spend the money. There's like an ending if you get to that point, but it's not the ending. It's not the real ending unless you grind for like another 25 hours on the same like repetitive things over and over. That's what I've heard. That's what I've read. I suspect if I got to that point, I would just go watch a YouTube video of the real ending and then say I beat the game. You know,
that's essentially what I've done. I did with Kingdom Hearts, Birth by Sleep. Watch the last special ending because of the stuff that I would have to do. It's like, yeah, I could do that, but that's not fun. So I'm going to go over here and go to YouTube and watch that.
Yeah, and you know, other things with the systems, like there's a lot more characters on screen. There's a lot bigger battles, but in a way, it almost feels like to the detriment of some of the gameplay. Like, let's do more because more is better. Whereas in the first game, I felt like a lot of the fights were, like, I don't know, they felt elegant in a way they don't feel here. So just like when I played, like, the Batman Arkham games, I could get these insane combos going once I understood the game systems in the first game. You know, I could have, like, a 50, 60 hit combo going and, like, not get hit by anyone because I understand the systems. In this game, because there's like so many more characters on the screen and there's just a lot of orcs that they throw at you, I feel like I barely ever get above like a, I don't know, 15, 20 hit combo very often, because suddenly there will just be an arrow that hits me from off screen because there's just so many guys around. Or like,
I understand that.
There's a bunch of people all attacking you at once, which, yes, it's more realistic, but that doesn't actually make for a better game. At the end of the day,
it's kind of like I read Brandon Sanderson said about dialogue. That dialogue is what you think about. That writing dialogue is not about what people sound like. It's about what you think people sound like. And that's kind of the way this sounds like to me with it's not like actually being in a fight. It's what you think being in a big fight would be.
Well, yeah, especially when you basically have superpowers in this world. Like, you should be able to dominate these fights, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, all that to like aside, the nemesis system is still core to this game, and it's still the coolest part about this game, and it's still just kind of amazing. Which, do you remember about that from the first one?
I remember a bit of it, yeah.
Okay, so
I don't remember like a lot of details, but I remember the vague outline of how it works.
It's basically there's like a hierarchy of orcs, and they interact dynamically with or without you, and they will level up. They will like challenge each other. They'll take each other out and gain levels, or they can get promoted up to like war chiefs and like different levels.
Right.
They can become a commander for the fortress that you have to take over in one of the regions, stuff like that. But then you can also like go and basically you subjugate the orc, which is a whole different conversation that I don't think we're equipped to have here, about like subjugating other people and how that can be a giant turnoff to this game in the first place.
Yeah.
That's a whole can of worms that deserves its own topic. So I'm gonna skip over it, sorry. And it's just like, you do that, you can add them to your army, and then you can have them like go challenge other people, or like you can have them infiltrate some of these higher up commanders, and then you can do like ambush missions, which are pretty cool, stuff like that. But the most interesting part is that orcs will like interact with you and then come back. So you'll think that you killed somebody, and then the way you killed them, like you'll see them later, they'll just randomly show up and be like, you thought you took me out, I'm back. And if you killed them with like a headshot, maybe they have like a new metal plate in their head.
Yeah.
Or like if they take you out, they will level up, and then they'll hold a grudge, and they'll like taunt you the next time that you see them, and it'll be something about like the way they killed you, and like, hey, I'm the whoever slayer, like, are you afraid of my arrow cell? Like it's better than that, but it's dynamically generated, but in a really, really good way.
And I've seen that was some of the stuff that I'd seen. I knew about the if you killed them this way, they would come back and have the kind of war scars or battle scars, and stuff like that. Yeah,
and that. Like all of the interaction with the orcs and the orc armies, that is still the most interesting part of this game. And it's like, I can't take away from that because it's really, really interesting. And like I said, those are more compelling than the main characters of the actual story quests, because like they actually have an impact. And like I said, you can approach it however you want. And if you really did lose to an orc, it's your own fault. And like it'll come back to haunt you in really interesting ways.
That's really cool. That is cool. It just sucks that you have to go through so much kind of drudgery to get to it and actually enjoy it.
Right. And so overall with the game, I think that in the busy release season we have, in this year of really good games that we've had, this one might just kind of like be outshone by everything else around it. They had originally planned to release this like 6 months ago, and I think if they did, it would have gotten a lot more attention. But I listen to a lot of gaming press, and like I read a lot of gaming press. This just has less buzz than I thought it would, a lot less than the first game. And I don't really know if they're doing enough in this game to have justified a full sequel that they've put here. I thought they would have iterated in different ways instead of kind of like, I don't know, it's more, but it's not that much more. It's kind of a weird balance. It feels
almost like an expansion rather than a sequel.
No, I mean, they did reinvent some of the systems, but it's almost like they didn't take it far enough, or it's too close to the original. Like, if you haven't played either game, you should just play this one. It's better. Like, there's no question. But at the same time, I kind of wish that there was more here than there actually is. Instead of just like more grinding, like actually more differences than the first game. But it's almost, like I said, there's almost too much to do in this open world, but not enough variety to it. Because there's, I was looking at all of the things left just on the map to do. I'm like, I don't really want to do all of this. And sometimes I feel like that with open world games, and other ones I don't. It depends on how well the story is integrated with the open world, is integrated with like the variety available. And yeah, there's a lot to do in this game, but it's not all that different from like region to region, from orc army to orc army. And when the story quests aren't that compelling in the end, it's kind of like, do I want to keep doing this? I think I'm nearing the end of my time with it, but I'm kind of fizzling out on it. I'm not, I mean, I guess the way to say it is there was no big like, screw this, I'm done moment. There was nothing that made me go like, nope, I'm done, put down the controller, never coming back to this game. It's just like apathy toward the game settling in slowly, which in a way is almost worse. Because if you're making a game, if you're making a piece of art, you want people to emotionally respond to it one way or another, right? Positive or negative. If you listed some emotions like, okay, you accomplished something, whether or not
Something,
it's good.
yeah.
Yeah. And like when my end result of this game after probably putting in 20, 25 hours at this point is kind of like this slow fizzle off and like a shrug and like, yeah, I guess I could boot it up again. Maybe not. I don't know. Like that fizzling out is kind of sad. It's almost worse.
Yeah, it is. I've always said that the best movies are not the ones that I leave the theater thinking like, oh my God, that was great. It's the ones that make me leave going, huh. Where that's the ones I keep thinking about. And that's kind of the way video games are too. The ones where if I just leave and it's like, yeah, it's with a shrug. It's like this is really good. But then I'm just like, okay, I'm done with this part now. I don't like it. Like those are not the games that's kind of like Destiny did for me. Where like, this is really good. And then I'm just like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah. So I guess I had a lot to unpack about that game, so thanks for listening to me. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is like I feel like the setting here might be dragging this game down. The fact that they are cramming it into Tolkien lore is probably to this game's, not the game's detriment, but like the systems in the game's detriment. Because if you took this Nemesis system and applied it somewhere else to another set of lore, it could be so interesting. Like, I can't believe, because it's Warner Brothers, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't believe they haven't applied this to a Batman game. Like, that's the most
true.
obvious one in my mind. Make a Batman game with a criminal organization that's, set up the same way, has a hierarchy where people can advance and get knocked down. Give people superpowers as they start to climb up that hierarchy and make a whole Batman game based on this Nemesis system. Like, you have me, right? You have, like, my day one money, probably.
Absolutely. I think they would have my day one money on that. Whereas
if you take this and you make another, like, whatever of War or Shadow of whatever game, I think I'm done. I think I'm not going to pick it up. I think I'll rent it with GameFly or something later. But after this one, I'm like, oh, okay. Nah, not quite what I wanted. So yeah, there you go. Those are my thoughts. Shadow of War. I'm still playing it. I'm just slowly fizzling out and like losing all passion for it. So I'm not going to be playing it much longer. I'm either going to push through and beat it because, like I said, I think I'm right at the end of Act 2. I think there's only a little bit more of Act 3, and then I'm like done outside of that grind that I'm going to skip. So we'll see. I'll let you know. I didn't want to end on like a down note of that. So I had one more really cool thing I did this week for Weekly Geekery. I listened to Hardcore History Death Throes of the Republic. Which, have you ever listened to this one? Or you haven't listened to any Hardcore History, right?
Nope, never listened to any of them. Nope.
Okay, so this one is about like the decline of Rome and specifically about Caesar. It's kind of like right before and right after Caesar, but Caesar is kind of the crux of it. And along with Caesar is Cleopatra, and along with that is Rome and Egypt. And in listening to it, I realized that I was listening to a lot of the story that's probably going to be in Assassin's Creed Origins. And I just got pumped for the game.
That's really true. Yes. And I was actually thinking about Assassin's Creed Origin whenever you were talking about this, where I'm going to hope that I don't fizzle out on it.
Yeah, and that's one of those open worlds that I tend not to. Like, I think I've beaten every mainline Assassin's Creed game, but they appeal to me, and a lot of it is the setting. The fact that they like drastically change the setting every single time makes a huge difference. And this setting is
going to be so. And that actually, with the Death Throes of the Republic, that sounds awesome because those are straight up my favorite periods of history to learn about and experience in games and movies and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I just realized as I was listening to it, I hadn't planned on lining it up with Assassin's Creed, but I basically listened to the history before, during, and after this Assassin's Creed game that's about to come out that I'm already excited for. So that was really cool. So if you guys are listening for or looking for certain Hardcore History episodes to start with, Death Throes of the Republic, that whole series, I think it's like 6 of them. Those are really, really good. I can highly recommend those.
I've got to listen to some of those. I just haven't done any of it.
Yeah, at some point. Okay, so that's about it for this week. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
And we're on Slack too, so kill part of your workday at slack.geek2geekcast.com for an invite. And we're also part of a podcast network, so head on over to geek2 to geekcast.com and see if any of the rest of our shows tickle your fancy.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
And I'm on Twitter as at Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's, and I blog at geekfitness.net.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Spooky sound.
Hi, my name is Joe Hogan, and I'm a geek. And if you're currently listening to this, there's a good chance you're a geek too. So check out my podcast, Geektitude. Each week, I talk with somebody about their geek aptitude. Sometimes I talk to people in a geeky profession. Sometimes it's someone doing something really cool with their geekiness. Often it's another geeky podcaster. But it's always someone who wants to share their inner geek. So join me each week as we come together to geek out about all the geeky stuff we love. And remember, this week, keep it geek.